This is our home page of our application at the moment. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get our inquiry service, which has this dummy data item, to give us the customer information, which is Marianne Vance, in this page. Now what we need to do is we need to understand how the home page works. The home page uses HTML. Remember that Ionic works with effectively a kind of a web component that displays applications without any of the normal features of a website page. It looks like a normal native app, and it's kind of a hybrid approach to what we do. So we're going to change the appearance of the home page and get it to use the service to give us an inquiry object which fits the structure that we've got in our interface and display one data item only, just for the moment, on our home page to prove that our service is working. Now I've Control K and Control S. Control KS to save everything. I've recompiled and everything is okay. We've made quite a lot of changes, and in fact I let it go too long before I did that save to check that we hadn't broken anything. It's good practice to save often, just to make sure that you don't have too far to backtrack if any errors are discovered. So before we actually make changes to the homepage HTML, let's think about what's happening. An HTML page is used in what's called an Angular style, which is a single page application style, so that lots of stuff stays constant, it remains unchanged, but data will be supplied whenever things are needed. Now, how does that work? Well, the HTML is just the HTML, and you can see that it's static at the moment. There's nothing in there that would change regardless of what happened when this page was displayed. It's all pretty standard. Now, we can interact with that word docs, and it will take us to the framework docs here. So how does this data get controlled? Now, the interactivity of this page works inside the TS file, the TypeScript file. For every page, there's a module which says this is how it gets its Angular structure. There's the HTML, which is the display of the data and the information. There's a CSS file, there's a test file, and then there's the interactivity, which is the functionality of this page, which works in here. So we're going to work with this first. This is what we're going to change first. And the way in which I intend to do this is to copy things in off the clipboard so that you don't watch my awful typing, and will understand it by explaining each thing that I put into the page. So the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to use the inquiry, so we need to be able to import the inquiry. But this time, we're not importing the interface to the inquiry, we're going to import the service. Now this service already has the import of the interface in it, and we now say that we want to use this service to give us data that we can work with. Now what we've done is we've imported it, and in order to make sure that we can use it, we have to construct it into this object when this object is launched, and we use the constructor for that. Constructors have a standard format. So here's our constructor format. The word constructor is the keyword that says do this when we launch. And inside the parentheses here, we can inject the things that we've imported. So we're going to inject the inquiry service. So what we do is we give it a local name, which is a small e for the camel case. Made that mistake last time. So we've got the camel case there, of type inquiry service. That means that our inquiry service, called this as a variable name, is now available to use. So we've imported it, and we've said we want to construct it, and that's going to call our inquiry service when we make the page happen. You'll remember me telling you that Ionic uses web components. So let's look at our HTML, and you'll see that these are standard website structures. We have a header, we have a toolbar, we have a title. These are all web components, and what is great about the new Ionic 4 is that the rest of this Angular structure doesn't change the fact that you can use these web components. We could be using a React, a Vue, a Flutter structure, and these would still be the web components that we would display. They're getting the data in different ways, they're giving the manipulation of the data in different ways, but the components remain the same. So our header is our header here. Our toolbar is inside the header. Our title is inside the header, and so forth, and we've given the title Ionic blank. That's the text that's being displayed here. So these are web components, and that's how Ionic works. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the header first, and then I'll talk through what it is that we've got in our new web component structure. So header stays the same, toolbar this stays the same, but we've added a decorator. We've said that we want its color to be the danger color, and we'll look at colors in a minute when we're looking at the different sort of these SCSS files that we've got across this whole structure. So we've said that we want it to be, it's red. Our title is going to change from Ionic blank to inquiry. Then we're going to put a button in, and we're going to put it at the end, and we're going to say that it's going to reference the edit page. And the router direction is forward. So that's going to call the root edit that we declared in our routing module in the application. So we've got our edit root, we've got our icon, which is going to be icon only, no text, and it's going to be the add. Now we're going to have to change these roots here in just a minute so that this edit root will work. Excuse me, I'm going to lose my voice again. So this button is going to sit on this right hand part here, and it's going to be inside the buttons collection. The end word says put it at the end. In our culture, that's on the right hand side. If it were Arabic or something that reads in a different text direction, it would be on the left hand side. So that's our header setup. So what we need to do is to make sure that this edit root can be found, or everything will complain. So what we need to do is to adjust our routing module. So let's adjust our routing module. I would actually normally do this when I first set it up, but quite simply I've forgotten because we were changing the structure and I've got kind of assumed that I've done it. It's really easy for us to set new routes up. Here's our routes from Angular, and these are the various routes that our application has access to. So we're going to change that one to edit. This is just a form. I could have easily have used the original structure within the code file from the HTML file, the TS file, but let's just change it to something that's a bit more user-friendly. What I also want to do is I want to copy that particular one, which is the edit, and this will mess up the format a bit when I paste it, I think. Yes, it does, but never mind. And what we're going to do is we've got a duplicate here, but this time we want another route that we can use, which allows us to supply an ID that will take us to the editing situation with this particular record being displayed. So we've now got that particular set of values set up. These are new routes that we can now use in our application. And as you saw, we're using the first one of them. We're going to use the first one of them in this situation here, in that route being called in router direction forward. The router direction forward just says to the Ionic animation which direction are you going in, because it displays the page with a very subtle animation, and it would look odd if you're moving forward but it's showing as if we're going backwards. And I don't think you would normally notice it, but I bet you'll notice it now, that when you go from pages in the applications on your own phone, for example, you'll see this direction sense of things are moving forwards or backwards. So let's look at the changes we've made up to this point, which are very just much about the header. And you'll see that we've now got the color danger, we've got the change of title, we've got the button. So what I've done is I've taken out the content from here. And if I now refresh my browser, you'll see that I get the header, but I have no content. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some content in here. And this is a fairly complicated piece of code, so I want to talk it through bit by bit. Right. So we've got the content, which we're saying is padding. Now the padding is just put a space around it so that it doesn't flush up to the edge. Inside our content, we're going to have a list. Now a list is like an array, and it allows us to have items in the list, as many items as we need. And you'll see when we come to another page, the other page, sorry, we'll have more than one item. Let's look at the item that we want. Now this is the funny bit that you're going to have to get an explanation of. Asterisk ng4, that's an iteration, and it says go through the inquiry service, which we've already provided, and the inquiries, remember the array, which has only got one thing in it, and say let inquiry of inquiry service loop through them. And then the next thing, the double curly braces, is called string interpolation. It takes this data and takes the member that we want and turns it into a string to be displayed on the page. So we've now got, going through our list, but there's only one, let's display the customer element from each of the inquiries that we find, but there's only one. So let's just change this and Control S, and we should get a compile. So I've compiled and refreshed, and the data is displayed exactly what we wanted. This, I'm sorry, I'm going to go through this again. So we asked the inquiry service to give us a range of inquiries. We then took each one of them, there's only one, and displayed the customer name. Let's go back to our service. There's only one, and the name is Mariam Vance, and Mariam's name is displayed here. We've displayed our first piece of data. That's a big step forward.